Prologue. Meet Sang-yu, an ordinary sophomore in college whose life was going well. He had a certain ability that allowed him to earn money, work many jobs, and even fight without having to lift a finger. That ability is known as cloning. This chapter showcases the future events that are to happen in later chapters, but also creates an exciting story of how Sang-yu would use his abilities to his advantage. Chapter 2. Awakening. The chapter starts off with Sang-yu wishing he had two bodies, so he could do more than one activity at a time, such as traveling, playing games, working, eating, studying, and even maybe falling in love. The scene then cuts to Sang-yu in a group of people who are there to get awakened and receive their powers. It is then explained by the hunter in charge of that day's process. He explains how there is a program known as the Awakening Program, which is a national-level system implemented by the government to help people awaken their powers. The idea is that people who are exposed to mana awaken their powers, so therefore the government has created a safe process in which ordinary citizens can go through a portal that exposes them to safe levels of mana, allowing them to receive the system, which is an AI type of program that only the awakened can see. They can only see their own stats. This system would then allow awakened citizens to then be able to hunt monsters inside a gate. When it's Sang-yu's turn to go inside a portal, his bracelet is scanned, which is a type of identification. After going through the portal, Sang-yu hears a voice inside his head, and then wakes up to see himself on the other side of the portal, where agencies from different guilds are there to recruit potential hunters. An agent from a guild approaches Sang-yu and inquires about his abilities. When Sang-yu opens up his status menu and checks his abilities and stats, which are not that impressive, Sang-yu then states that his ability is cloning, which in turn makes the agent feel uncomfortable as he believes that type of ability is whack. Sang-yu then excuses himself to the exit where he is then scanned and is then documented the type of abilities he has, and his stats to the person in charge. After leaving the site, Sang-yu returns home and tries out his ability, calling out Summon Clone, which he is then surprised to see an identical clone of himself. Chapter 3. Using My Clone Part 1. Sang-yu sees his naked chubby body, and asks his clone if he can touch him, to which the clone responds with a yes. Sang-yu is then stopped in his tracks as he has some dirty thoughts running wild in his head. After getting himself back in touch with reality, Sang-yu touches himself. I know, sounds weird, and is flabbergasted to find out that it's real flesh and not some sort of ghost. Hinting at the idea that there might have been a similar hunter with a skill that resembles cloning, but the clone is actually just a fake, meaning an illusion. Sang-yu thinks of what type of order the clone can do when rummaging through the types of orders he should give. The clone acts out the order to sit when Sang-yu was thinking of that thought in his head. Realizing that the clones can listen to him without him even having to speak, basically, he can now speak telepathically. He tests this idea out by giving out simple orders in his head such as sit, get up, etc. After a while, the clone is fatigued. Sang-yu comes to the conclusion that the clone probably has the same type of stamina and stats that the original body has. A screen pops up in front of Sang-yu, stating that his stamina increased by 0.001, which is ridiculously low. We are then given a short overview of Jumper, George Lucas, an S-ranked hunter who is known as the first hunter to clear the most dangerous dungeon to exist, Odin's Tower. We are then cut to a short dialogue and monologue of Lucas hinting about an event that is to come 5 years from now. A month later, we see Sang-yu's clone running for him, and when the clone sits down to take a break, a person approaches him to give him some water, but the clone doesn't respond and just starts running again, but he seems much skinnier. We are then cut to Sang-yu, who seems to have lost 20 pounds, and is in much better shape in just 1 month. That is a ridiculous amount of pounds to lose in just 1 month. This man Sang-yu must have had the clone do exercises non-stop. Sang-yu then gives a summary of what he has found out about his abilities in the past month that he's been awakened. 1. Pain or damage his clones receive don't reflect back to him, it's the same thing vice versa. 2. His clone is unsummoned when it receives too much damage or exhausts itself to the brink of death. 3. The clone also changes alongside his original body. 4. He can give commands through telepathic communication even from a distance. Meaning Sang-yu's clone can be doing push-ups in the middle of a road where he was running. 5. His clones can clone themselves. We are then given a flashback to Sang-yu researching his abilities and the idea of stats. Through his research, he found out that there are skills he can achieve through repetitive actions, such as repetitive damage of oneself, can allow them to receive an ability known as regeneration, which can then also be increased in levels through repetitive damage and healing of oneself. What was even more surprising was that a stat increase of 0.001 is believed to be extremely difficult to achieve through just exercise, which I found to be crazy, as that doesn't seem much of a stat increase. But I guess it's difficult to increase one's stats, so therefore even an increase of just 0.001 can have a major effect on a person's physique. We are then shown the stats of Sang-yu. His overall stats have yet to achieve even the single whole digits yet. His physique has changed in a drastic manner, making him almost impossible to recognize when compared to his old self. Sang-yu is then holding a gym poster, contemplating that if he also exercises he would receive double the stat increase. But he shortly gives up on the idea when he notices his computer screen, claiming that he'll be the brain, and his clones would be the brawn, meaning he'll sit back and relax, while his clones would do the hard work. In other words, he's lazy. Chapter 4, Using My Clones Part 2. The chapter starts off with us, the readers, viewing Sang-yu's financial account balance and his recent transactions, his balance being 123,801, which in US currency is basically $92. Sang-yu reflects on how broke he is, and that he'll sooner or later be out of money, as his main source of income, which used to be gaming, is now dying. There's also the fact that he seems to be wasting a lot of money on food. After reflecting, Sang-yu decides that he should find a part-time job, one that focuses on manual labor, as that way he can earn money and increase his physical. As Sang-yu is researching to find a part-time job that fits his description, he contemplates how at the start he'll have to do the job himself, rather than making his clone do it, as he himself has to understand the job, so the commands to the clone aren't complicated, as complications might result in a problem. After a while, Sang-yu finds a box packaging job that pays him a daily wage of 100,000 won, $75 in United States dollars, which is a tad bit off from how much he has in his bank account. Sang-yu likes the job description and decides to give them a call, thinking that he will most likely start working a couple of days from now, only to be told that he can start working immediately if he's free today. Confused, he assumes the company must be low on workers, and decides to head to the location of the job ASAP. At the site of the job, he covers his clone with a mask, hat, and a hoodie, so as to avoid any unnecessary confusion, as well as an explanation to his skill. Sang-yu also decides to name his clone Jae-on-do. Standing there, Sang-yu is confused as to where he's supposed to go, as there are multiple buildings and warehouses in front of him. But suddenly someone named Deokshil, apparently an acquaintance of Sang-yu, recognizes him and guides him to where he's supposed to go, after hearing that Sang-yu is there for the packaging gig. After a couple of exchanges and a thank you, both of them say their goodbyes and leave on their merry way. Sang-yu is starting to feel nervous, as this is his first time working a manual type of job. After slapping himself to calm himself down, he then asks his clone if he's nervous at all. The clone responds with a no, giving Sang-yu the assurance that since he's awakened, he shouldn't worry and get his job done with. The scene then cuts to Sang-yu desperately breathing for air, lol, as he's lying down on the ground, asking for all the workers and delivery personnel to forgive his arrogance, as he has heavily underestimated the job. We then see a couple of snippets of his clone and other delivery workforce carrying and packaging the boxes. Sang-yu, with desperation, is wondering whether the people in this job have some sort of skill that deals with their physical strength. Man is making excuses. Sang-yu, after seeing his clone, regrets coming to the job as his clone seems to be doing perfectly fine, completely contradictory to what he thought would happen. Sang-yu and the rest then take a little break, where we then see a panel of Sang-yu's soul leaving his body, while on the other hand, his clone is perfectly fine. Deokshil then offers both the clone as well as Sang-yu what seems to be a rip-off version of Pepsi and some snacks. Sang-yu thanks Deokshil, and the both of them exchange a couple of dialogues, asking for his clone's name, inquiring if Sang-yu is feeling alright, as most people seem to quit after trying the job out, which is why they are always short of workers. Deokshil compliments the both of them for being strong. After this statement we see Sang-yu's thoughts, which state how he would have done the same if he wasn't pathetically broke. After a couple more exchanges, Deokchil, realizing that Sang-yu is in a prestigious college, asks whether he's interested in tutoring his daughter for 50,000 won, $37 in United States dollars, per 2 hours, twice a week, as another side job. Sang-yu is at first taken aback by the request, but then remembers how he's almost gonna be homeless if he isn't on that grind, decides to take the job. After that, Deokchil says his goodbyes, and we then see a panel of Sang-yu's screen, which shows how his stamina and endurance have increased by 0.001. The break time they had ends, and right before getting right into work, he decides to eat one more snack, only to notice an empty bottom inside the bag. Confused, he turns around to see his clone chomping down on all the snacks with no expression on his face, while Sang-yu watches with anger. Lol. This chapter covers how Sang-yu will be earning his income, as well as how his clones perform within the job. It also foreshadows a potential confrontation with Sang-yu and Deokchil's daughter, and if that might spark some sort of a close relationship. This chapter also highlights how funny this manhwa can get with the interaction between Sang-yu and his clones, not to mention the amazing illustration this manhwa produces, which further expresses the hilarious expressions and moments between Sang-yu and his clones. Chapter 5: Expanding Horizons. Sang-yu wakes up grunting and groaning in pain from yesterday's side gig of moving boxes. After finishing with the grunting, Sang-yu stands up a bit and decides to just make his clone, number 1, do the job for now. We then see a snippet of Sang-yu's stats, showing just how much number 1 is sweating his ass off. Sang-yu then orders number 1 to come back home. Sang-yu thinks about how convenient it would have been if he could just unsummon his clone. But he knows that he can't, since everything his clone wears would just be left behind. While waiting for his clone, Sang-yu's stomach growls, signifying his hunger. The scene cuts to a table of dishes, one bowl being empty. Sang-yu, who is now satisfied after satiating his hunger, hears a couple of beeps coming from the door, where we then see clone number 1 coming through the door, sweating and panting with fatigue. Sang-yu, looking at number 1, commands him to take a shower and change his clothes as he apparently looks filthy. We then see a couple of panels of what's supposed to be number 1 taking a shower and changing his clothes. After number 1 is done with cleaning himself up, Sang-yu asks him to lend his hand over, so he could prick him with a needle. This is so he could learn the regeneration skill, and even though number 1 is a clone, Sang-yu feels bad, complimenting number 1 for enduring the pain, lol, as if that hurt a lot. We are then cut to a scene of when Sang-yu was researching his powers in the Hunter Wiki. In the wiki, it's stated how an awakened will unlock the regeneration skill only after repeated and continuous injury and recovery. Sang-yu contemplates whether 1 month would suffice, while at the same time feeling bad for number 1. Later, Sang-yu commands number 1 to eat his fill and go work out after. He also hands him his spare phone, so he could contact Sang-yu, as that would be easier than number 1 coming back and forth to Sang-yu. We are then cut to a panel of Sang-yu, who seems to be heading to the gym. While waiting at the street lights, a friend of his named Jang-do-kin jumps in, surprising Sang-yu. They both chat away, and Jang-do decides to go with Sang-yu to the gym, as he apparently heard that there were some sexy female trainers at the gym. The scene is then cut to the inside of the gym, where there only seems to be guys that are training there. Sang-yu then signs up for a 3-month membership, including a demonstration of all the equipment, which apparently turns out to be 160,000 won, or $120 in United States dollars currency. While paying for his membership, we see Sang-yu's thoughts, which indicate that his clone would be the one doing the work while he sits at home. We then see Sang-yu performing an incline bench press, and right when his instructor was about to compliment him, Jang-do makes a loud noise with the heavy weights that he benched, catching the attention of mostly everyone at the gym. The instructor inquires about his experience at the gym, wondering if it's his first time. Jang-do answers that while it is his first time at the gym, he's an awakened who has a strength of 2.1. The instructor is impressed and states that while he is a stamina build type of person, he is quite jealous of Jinjo's strength. Sang-yu, who is also impressed, contemplates if his strength is only 2.1, and he can exert that much amount of force, just how impressive must other hunters who are in another league must be. Sang-yu then understands why, despite the job of a hunter being dangerous, why people want to become one. Sang-yu is then interrupted with a phone call from Deokjil, who inquires if Sang-yu can come meet his daughter for the tutoring gig. Sang-yu accepts, stating that he'll head to his house right away. We are then cut to a panel of Sang-yu in an elevator trash-talking Jinjo, as he didn't sign up for the gym, like he thought, as there were no female instructors. In a flashback we see Jinjo with no humility accepting that fact. Sang-yu, after coming out of the elevator, hears a ton of noise and arguing behind the door. And right before he could knock, the door opens, slamming Sang-yu in the face, who gets knocked down to the ground, where we are then introduced to Deokjil's daughter.
Chapter 6: The Hunter Exam. We see Sang-yu recovering from the door slam with what seems to be some sort of pad or cloth to his head. Sang-yu's colleague apologizes. "Sorry about that, Sang-yu. I didn't see you there." Sang-yu responds back saying that it's not a problem. Then, Sang-yu's colleague wife appears with some apples. "Dear me, is that Sang-yu? Why, I didn't even recognize you. You're so thin now," complimenting his appearance. "Long time no see, Mrs. Jang." "Yeah, I've been working out recently," responds back Sang-yu as he giggles. Now, for the main reason Sang-yu came here for, he addresses his colleague's daughter. "Anyway, Hyun, was it?" As she flinches. "Yes," she responds back nervously. Sang-yu introduces himself, stating that he'll be her new tutor. While all this is going on, we see a funny panel of her parents talking to each other. Look at her, turning red. Doesn't hate that idea so much now, does she? Hyun, embarrassed from the recent events, is struggling to look Sang-yu in the eye. Sang-yu states that it's alright for her to just call him Sang-yu, and that he'll want to take a look at her grades before they start scheduling their plans. Hyun, shocked, blurts out, "My grades," potentially giving us the idea she performs very poorly in school. And it turns out to be true, as in the next panel, Sang-yu is trembling. As we see her grades D, F, C, D, 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 clearly not good. We then see Hyun covering her face, all red from embarrassment, as her family is just in silence. Hyun's dad takes the moment to run off while he can. Sang-yu, noticing Hyun's embarrassed state, tries to reassure her, stating, "It's okay. I didn't do very well on my entrance exam either. I was a master of procrastination." Somewhat relieved, Hyun answers back. "Really? Really, just do your best," responds back Sang-yu. "I will. I think we should start your lessons right away. Twice a week and on Mondays," as they plan out their tutoring schedule days. Time passes by and we see Sang-yu back at his home. Seems like we have a long way to go. Thinking back, he contemplates. But at least she's a better student than I expected. Looks like one is offloading trucks. The spare phone works for now, but it won't be enough if I get more clones later on. As he goes to the Hunter web. Let's see if there are any related skills on the Hunter web. He tries to search for some skills, but notices that they're all way out of his budget, as the prices are all in the millions. One of them, the familiar skill, is at 100 million won, which is about 100,000 US dollars. And another one, Scroll of Telepathy, is 400 million, which is 400,000 US dollars. As Sang-yu starts crying, realizing that he won't be able to get any new skills. He thinks to himself that if he had that type of money, he'd rather buy a home rather than getting a skill, as he sees it as a waste. While seeing these prices, he starts to think to himself, hunters must make a ton of money, as these items are just in the low grade and not even high-end stuff. Embarrassingly, he looks at his bank account, his balance being only 233,000 won, which is nowhere near enough to buy any of those scrolls. Putting the purchasing of the scrolls aside, he lays down on his bed, contemplating whether he should become a hunter. Looking at some news which all seem to praise hunters and their paying jobs, pointing out how lucrative being a hunter can truly be. He stands up thinking that maybe he should try it out. Making himself feel better, he states that he didn't get the skill just to load some trucks. As he grabs his jacket and gets ready to take the hunter exam, a notification pops up. Vitality has been unlocked. We then get some backstory of what hunters are. Apparently in the 2000s, multiple monsters came out of a portal known as gates, which occurred all across the globe, wiping out half the population of humans. While humanity was at the brink of extinction, many mysterious people with powers started appearing, some of them possessing powers capable of defeating such monsters. Now, in the current day, people just track down monsters who were left from the disaster. And these people are known as hunters. As we see Sang-yu looking up a guide of the hunter exam. Sang-yu arrives at the hunter center, prepared to take his exam. While stretching, he thinks to himself, maybe it's the vitality I unlocked yesterday. But I somehow feel great, even after just a couple hours of sleep. As Sang-yu walks into the hunter center, we see various eccentric people with all types of armor and weapons. While looking around, Sang-yu notices that only a few are here for the hunter exam. One lady speaks out loud announcing, registration for the hunter qualification exam ends in 20 minutes. The test will be held in the basement. First level. Thank you. Seeing you thinks to himself, in the basement? Interesting. I'm getting a bit nervous. Finally finding the exam room, Sang-yu enters saying, excuse me, only to notice the room is full with weird, scarred up, bandaged, and not so friendly looking people. He thinks to himself, so many people, as he nervously sits down. Some of the other participants make fun of him. Did you hear that guy? As they laugh, what a noob. As the proctor for the exam enters the room, pleased to make your acquaintance. Name's Myung-hwan Han. I'm a C-rank hunter and I'll be proctoring this exam. The exam contains a writing section, a performance section, and an aptitude test. Anyone caught cheating will receive an automatic 0 and will be banned from taking the exam for the rest of the year. Do you understand? Foul play will not be tolerated under any circumstances. As everyone is left in silence, Sang-yu thinks to himself, so intimidating. And now, the hunter qualification exam will begin. Thank you for watching. Comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And go support the author by reading their work.